look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, timeforhemp.com, and, of course, iHeartRadio. We are the only all-cannabis broadcasting network on iHeartRadio, a group of people that have come together to get the message of the need to end prohibition to every corner of the world. It is Monday, and on Monday we celebrate all the wonderful things cannabis can do for our spirit, our body, our mind, and our soul. And we put a spotlight on the amazing organization, Patients at a Time. Lynn, Mathre, and Byrne have organized that with their friends for people who are out of time and are trying to get their affairs in order while having a quality of life and taking care of themselves as well. We, as human beings, are very frail and fragile. We are tabs, temporarily able-bodied people at all times. And there will always come a time somewhere in our path, either from old age or disease or other physical problems, that we will start slowing down and falling apart and face those moments when we are at a time and we will be calling the wonderful people like Mary Lynn and Al. You guys do a fantastic job there with all the love and care you give to your patients, Mary Lynn and Al.
Well, thank you, Casper. That's nice of you to say those things, but we do appreciate that you allow Patients at a Time to have an hour here every Monday on Time for Hemp to discuss the amazing plant that cannabis is. But first, I got to give you my advertisements, guys. This is Patients at a Time. We're a U.S. national organization. We're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary here in May in West Palm Beach, Florida. We're going to have the 9th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics there. It'll be held at the Palm Beach County Convention Center, a beautiful spot in West Palm Beach. If you go to either patientsoutofTime.org or medicalcannabis.com, I'm leaving out the W's, you will find all kinds of information there about the faculty, which is international. One of our guests today is a faculty member. The folks are coming from Canada, they're coming from Europe, Spain, etc., of course, as well as the United States. As always, we feature patient testimony. They'll be very much involved in the conversation. Also involved this year with a particular emphasis will be veterans and issues of veterans, particularly traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, phantom pain, the things that bother vets in particular, but also affect all parts of society. And I'll just mention that this conference is accredited. That means the researchers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, et cetera, that come for a small fee will get continuing medical education credits, quite a few actually. I believe it's somewhere in the order of 12 plus, which is a pretty good number. And they can also, but that's it's really a 2-day course. They can also take a course, an accredited course online. Here's another webpage, themedicalcannabisinstitute.org, themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. Same group of healthcare professionals can take accredited online courses. This is like one at a time, like an hour at a time, also for a small fee. And for about every hour, they get a CME. The advantage here is that this is available through the internet, e-learning. It's available all over the world. It's available to these healthcare professionals whenever they want to take the course, in the middle of the night, in their office, whenever. And so the idea, the notion that is put forth, at least by the United States government, that there is no research, there's not any education, we don't know enough about it. It's all BS. Yes, we do. We have enough science. We'd like more. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong about that, but we have enough. We have enough to know this is a really good medicine and really safe. And one of the ways we know that on Mondays is we interview people that are absolutely cannabis experts, people that have spent a good part of their life, their professional life especially, doing cannabis research. Today, we have one of those folks. He is a Canadian. He is a doctorate. He has his PhD, and his name is Darryl Hudson. How are we doing today, Darryl?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, and you have Mary Lynn here, and we got Casper listening in, and 2.5 million people around the world. And before we get to your particular expertise in cannabis work, I just wonder if you could tell the listening audience, a little bit about yourself. You're a Canadian, a little bit about your life in Canada. You got your doctorate. Right away, you go, right from college to doctorate work, those kinds of things. And then eventually, what brought you to your interest in cannabis research?
Sure, I'll give you the elevator spiel. So I grew up in southern Alberta, and agriculture was obviously, dear to my heart and very prevalent around where I grew up. So I was always involved in agriculture and had a keen interest in it. And like most teenagers, discovered cannabis at a young age and, really found an affinity to the plant, not only medically, but also just because of all the vast, agricultural and economic benefits that this crop can provide for us. So I did decide at a very young age that I did want to study cannabis and took the proper academic routes to do so. I studied biology at the University of Calgary and the University of Lethbridge in Alberta. And from there, actually had the opportunity to transition into some genetic research, looking at DNA repair and cancer in mouse and rat models. This work was actually done out of the Canadian Centre for Behavioral Neuroscience. So I was fortunate enough, I guess, to cut up a lot of mice and rats. And the reality was I kind of became fed up with that and as well as the pharmaceutical industry at that point. And my eyes were really open to how, it really is about treating people, not curing people, and not necessarily helping people. This is an industry and it's a money-making industry. So from there, I did make the transition back into agriculture and studied the genetics of agricultural crops, rice and corn, learning how they take up nutrients, looking at how we can genetically modify those plants to take up nutrients better and to increase yields so that we can feed more people without damaging the environment as much. So that really provided me the opportunity to learn all about the plants and nutrients and how that they grow on a genetic level. And after I finished my postdoctoral work at the University of Guelph in Ontario, I was picked up by a fertilizer company, and we were fortunate enough to kind of redesign a lot of fertilizers from the plant's perspective. What does the plant want and how it would uptake those nutrients better, rather than from a chemist's perspective, what will mix in the tank sort of thing. And after that, I was picked up by one of the new commercial cannabis companies up here in Canada, and we were fortunate enough to put a really good application together, and were granted the first new license under the commercial cannabis system in 2013. And being tied down to a company was a learning experience, but I've just found as a scientist that it's really nice for me to be able to get out and be a little more free to help the cannabis industry in general get on its legs, provide data to the legislators and the politicians as they need it, and continue to collect that data on all aspects, whether it's the growth of the cannabis plant, the genetics of the plant, or how the plant's actually affecting the patients. So I guess in a nutshell, that's what brings me here today.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find my mute button here. I keep it on mute so you don't get any background, and I've just lost the thing. Well, boy, that's pretty interesting that to me that you started essentially, I guess, as you entered college, you had already kind of decided you were going to center on the cannabis plant. Is that right? No?
Yeah, no, that's actually very true. Even in the first year of university, I used to joke. People would say, "Why are you studying plant genetics?" And I'd say, "Because I'm going to grow the best weed ever." And people would laugh, but I was actually very serious. And unlike a lot of people that have put in their dues, hiding in basements and out in the woods trying to produce this product, much respect to them. I took a different route and knew one day that this was going to be legal, knew one day that we were going to be able to actually research this crop and this plant in all aspects. And so, I put in my 10 years in school to try and get to this point. And it's just been a very, fortuitous sequence of events that the timing of the changes in legislation has enabled me to really capitalize on my education.
Yeah, your timing has been excellent. The world has changed so dramatically here in the cannabis world anyway, certainly within the last 3 to 5 years with states down here legalizing cannabis, in Canada having a medical cannabis program that I know it had problems, but at least it was there, and for a lot of people it was very functional. So, I'm glad we have guys like you that have understood that this is going to be a very, not only a legal plant, but it's going to be a super valuable plant. I'm going to ask a question. I know the answer, but I want people to hear it. Nutrients are important to life. And you studied, what did you say, rice and corn, and I'm sure other things that humans rely on for sustenance. You found anything better than the cannabis plant for a nutrient?
I studied nutrients more on how the plant actually takes up the nutrients, but I know, I know what you're talking about. When it comes to the seed oil, it's one of the healthiest things on the planet. It has all the essential amino acids that the human body needs, as well as a lot of these really healthy short-chain fatty acids. And again, that's just the seed oil. We've got fiber and all sorts of other things that, as well as the medicine that are beneficial. So.
Right. I take it you're probably Udo Erasmus fan.
Yes, very much.
Another Canadian, folks, if you don't know Udo Erasmus, he's another wonderful Canadian scientist, researcher, professor, teacher. And he wrote the definitive...
Years back.
Huh?
Yeah, years ago.
Years ago, yeah. He wrote the definitive book on nutrients, nutrition, oils that provide nutrition as opposed to what Darryl studies.
Something like fats that heal, fats that kill.
Something like that. Yeah, it's worth looking up. The first name is Udo, UDO, and the last name is Erasmus. I'm sure he's a PhD, Canadian. You'll find him. Let's go with your expertise. So, you feed your cannabis plants particular nutrients to get them to do what?
Well, that's a really interesting question. It depends what you're growing cannabis for, I guess. Really, cannabis is an amazing plant for pulling nutrients out of the soil. And so, cannabis is being planted in a number of areas as a heavy metal accumulator to remediate toxic soils. And that can be problematic if that's being turned into medicine for sure. But what we found, even in the last 2 weeks of development when growing medical cannabis, is tweaks to the fertilizers in a very specific way. It can actually lead to input molecules that are going to increase specific cannabinoids. So by feeding, very specific amino acid precursors in combination with potassium and phosphorus ratios and some other things, we've been able to increase the THC or CBD of cannabis plants by, 2 to 4%, simply by feeding them different things. So, that being said, the nutrients that you're giving your plants throughout their life cycle is very important. And, especially when you go out of an organic system where you no longer have all those microbials in the ecosystem that are actually going to turn over a lot of the nutrients. It really is important that, you feed your plants properly to get the maximum results, not only when it comes to yield, but when it comes to whatever you're looking for, whether it's fiber, seed oil, or medical properties.
Your work then is essentially done for indoor grows? Is that where your science goes mostly?
Unfortunately, in Canada, the only thing that's actually legal are the indoor grows. There are a few people that did have licenses to put a few plants in their backyard, but those are kind of going by the wayside. So yeah, most of my work is done in quite controlled environment systems. That being said, I'd love to get out into Northern Cali and Humboldt County and start to see what we can actually do with the environment as well.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering if the, I'll just say, artificial environment that you seem to have to work within would be artificially changing the plant as well, let alone what your nutrient input will be, as opposed to real sunshine and stuff.
Well, like with any science, when you really start to study something, you want to eliminate as many confounding factors as possible. So to be able to take it into a controlled environment system where you can tweak one or two things very specifically does give you very valuable information. Whether that translates into the same sort of percent differences that you will see in the field, that's where you take the basic research and then apply it and start to realize. Yeah, a lot of these fertilizer companies, for instance, have been called snake oil companies because if you deprive a plant of nutrients and then give it anything, it's probably going to respond quite well. And, they will show a graph showing a 10 or 40% increase. But that's not necessarily an increase over a healthy plant in a healthy ecosystem. So you're very correct there that, even though the basic science does give us a legitimate foothold to move forward on it, we really have a long way to go before we're going to understand the full production techniques that are required in order to optimize this plant in different ways.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to take a break here in a minute, Darryl. And I just want to remind the folks that Dr. Hudson here is going to be a member of our international faculty at our next conference, and I neglected to give you the dates. And the dates are this coming May 21, 22, and 23. It'll be in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. It's a 2-day affair, and yes, it's very serious medicine and serious discussion about sick people getting well using cannabis in various ways, but we also have some fun. There's a lot of music on Friday night and Thursday night. We have a benefit dinner on Friday. There's live auction. There's silent auctions. There's all kinds of entertainers come and go. We have a good time, you can imagine. And it's important to be there to network and to get state-of-the-art information from folks like Dr. Hudson here. So with that, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with Dr. Darryl Hudson here in just a few minutes.
Physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Uno, dos, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right to the point and roll me a joint, the marijuana polka. Find me a dove and we'll call it love, the marijuana polka. Lick me your mitt and we'll get off real quick, the marijuana lock up the doors and we'll wax up the floors. The marijuana polka. Yeah, give me a line and we'll dance all night. The marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Señorita, sí, sí, la marihuana polka. Federales, oh no, federales, oh no, la marihuana polka. Tequila es bien, la noche también, la marihuana polka. Mi Lina y yo somos bichatos, la marihuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana, the marijuana, the marijuana polka.
Yeah, that's the Marijuana Polka, one of my favorite songs. I can't hear it enough or play it enough here on the big broadcast. Anytime I'm playing that song, you can bet I'm dancing around the house, jumping up and down, and taking time for hemp. Want to remind you that nearly 2.5 million people all around the world tune in and listen to the Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network. And anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, everybody likes to roll up their joints and pack their pipes and their vaporizers and hit their contraption, whatever it is that they're smoking from. So remember, anytime you hear the word joint, have a puff, puff, pass. My joint host today, Lynn, Mathre, and I are having a great joint conversation with one of our joint friends. I do want to say hello to Officer Peter Johnson. Wish him a happy 15th anniversary there at Homeland Security. Officer Johnson, we appreciate you listening in. We also want to say hello to all of our friends at the DEA who are also tuning in. We do expect you to take notes and share what you learn with your friends. With that said, I'm passing this joint chat back to my joint friends here at Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. And I'm not Mary Lynn Mathre, like you said, but Mary Lynn is here. I'm Al Byrne, and we're here not talking about us. We're talking about patients at a time and the work that experts all over the world are doing, learning about this plant. We have one of them with us, Dr. Darryl Hudson from west coast of Canada. Mary Lynn's family, Darryl, was very much in the wheat business in the northern parts of North Dakota, which is still Red River Valley, very fertile, very, very profitable place to be a farmer. And years ago, you'll appreciate this, I think, I called up the governor of North Dakota, and he actually spoke to me personally because the farm is what they call a legend farm, a pioneer farm. If you got out there and you killed all the Indians and took the land, you were a pioneer, and you kept the land, you were a pioneer farm. But anyway, he was very interested about the growing of hemp in North Dakota, and the statistics that I had then, and I think they've changed dramatically, was that essentially a wheat farmer in the very profitable Red River Valley of North Dakota that knew what he was doing was going to make about $50 an acre at the end of the day, end of the season. Whereas 200 miles to the north, up where you guys are, the farmers were growing hemp, and they were quadrupling that. They were getting $200 an acre, and I think it's up to $300 now. Do those numbers make sense to you?
Those numbers can make sense. The reality is if you want to get into growing hemp, you better have something to do with it. Otherwise, it just ends up sitting around and getting burnt in the fields, it seems. So a lot of these guys can make that sort of money off hemp if they're processing it themselves and have a product that they're making from it. But at this point, that the hemp industry isn't really set up like the wheat industry, where a farmer grows the wheat and someone ships it and stores it until it's at the right stock price to be sold, and then it'll be milled into flour and shipped to a baker where he's going to bake it and sell it to the regular public. If you can't do all of that with hemp, there may be some steps in that chain there where you're just at a roadblock. So that's kind of been, I think, one of the biggest hindrances to moving the hemp industry forward in general. However, that being said, agriculture across the board is in a crisis state. We've got not only droughts around the globe, but the increase in population is predicted to max out at, before 2050. And in order to actually feed that population, we're going to have to almost double the amount of crops that we're producing now, which is actually impossible. There's not enough land that we could clear and double that. So now we're relying on new farming techniques as well as new genetics to be able to do that. That being said, I think when you can take any crop and start to make it a dual purpose crop, like hemp, where you're going to get food and potentially fiber out of it, or medicine and potentially food out of it, or anything where you can get more than one use out of the crop, that's really going to help us in the global economy in general be able to utilize our land much better. And hemp is, obviously one of the best answers for that, because you can get food, fiber, medicine, fuel, you name it. There's a hemp car company coming out in Alberta next year, right? Kestrel Motors, and almost their entire car is made from hemp. So it can be done, and we knew it could be done in the 1930s when Henry Ford did it. So it's really amazing to start to see that. Unfortunately, it's all sorts of environmental pressures and things that are forcing us to make these changes. We weren't quite smart enough to do it on our own before we started to see the negative impacts of our actions. But we need to start looking at agriculture as a way to, not only feed ourselves, but produce other products so that we can save the planet and continue to live here.
All right. Now I'm going to scare everybody about you, Darryl, okay? Dr. Hudson is a genetics specialist, okay? And everybody's going to go, oh boy, they're keeping these crops and they're doing weird things to the genes and things, and that may be, and I'll let you deal with all that. But your look is, as I understand it, is to study the genes of cannabis plants, strains, different, whatever, you explain it, and see how the genetics of the plant may actually affect the symptoms that the plant is being used to affect. Am I somewhere there?
Yeah, I mean, the genetics itself is the base code. So for me, when I walk into a seed store and look at all the different cannabis strains or varieties that they have, it's kind of like walking into a book or a magazine store and seeing all the pretty covers, all the pretty pictures. But the text is really the genetics, and we don't have that. We've just started to get that. In 2010, the first cannabis genomes were published, since then, I've been involved in a large genome sequencing project, and we're, about to publish some very interesting data. But even once you have that text, it's now a matter of going through and reading all that text and starting to make correlations with things. So, for instance, we can make correlations between certain genes and fiber development or medicine development or, just leaf structure or whatever. And on the medical side of things, it's really interesting to note that patients consistently sort of list different associations with different varieties. This made me happy, this made me drowsy, I slept well, it was good for pain, right? So you've got all these different sort of effects that are obviously a result of different modulation of the endocannabinoid system in the body. And so that's not necessarily due to THC and CBD alone, but really this whole entourage effect and all the other molecules that are in there. So to start to study that from a genetic basis is, it's almost like stabbing in the dark blind. You can pick some genes and start to look at them and how they function. But having the patient's data to feed back is very valuable because, essentially we can start to parse out varieties that appear to be similar in their effects and then look at the metabolic levels inside those plants and correlate that to the genes, which in turn should allow us to breed specifically for those genes and create more effective varieties.
It's interesting that you're relying to some degree on what our government ridicules, I think, which is patient testimony. They call it, what do they call it? Anecdotal something or other.
Just anecdotal evidence.
Anecdotal evidence. But what you're saying is when you believe these people, you think that they're telling you the truth, and so you use that as a stepping off point to narrow your research to some degree. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, this isn't a novel technique. This has been done in everything you eat. For instance, there's been a resurgence in heirloom tomatoes. If you go back 15 years, there was hardly any tomato varieties in the stores, and most of them were just grown to be large, bulky, water-filled, flavorless crap. And what happened was you had researchers like Harry Clea at the University of Florida there started to study heirloom tomatoes and actually get people's feedback, what tomatoes were sweeter. Obviously, they could see things such as color, and make correlations between the color, what they could visually see, and the genes there. Sweetness much harder to do by visual, but obviously you could do some metabolic tests as well as give it to people. But really, when you're trying to create something that is both aesthetically pleasing to the customer as well as tastes good to the customer, and it is at a good price point, having their feedback, I think, is the best place to start, rather than just stabbing in the dark at all the genes that may produce sweetness, or may produce color. The reality is it's rarely one gene that's involved in these processes. It's a combination of a number of different genes making a number of different protein catalysts that, will produce different metabolites. So, from my perspective, it's much easier to almost go backwards and use the phenotypes, or what we can actually see out of that. Now, that being said, the phenotype really is, the result, the end result of an organism, and that's the result of both the genetics and the environment. So the environment can largely skew, what the genetics are coding for. The genetics is the base code, but, if I take a plant and put it in sandy soil and grow it, with minimal light at 10 degrees Celsius versus putting a nice healthy plant outside, even if they're genetically identical, they'll end up hugely different. So, it really is a combination of the genetics and the environment that we're looking at to produce the end result. And when we can control, what genetics we have as well as the environment that's being produced in, getting the feedback, I think, is one of the most valuable things we can get.
Well, of course, we agree with you. We're going to take a break here in a minute, Doctor, but that's what Patients Out of Time really is all about. I mean, I'll remind people again, of all the cannabis organizations that I know of in the world, ever heard of, The only one that has Patience as a first name is Patience Out of Time. And that's because, first of all, the founders, including me, a lot of us were patients, still are patients. And the people that we worked with, the doctors and nurses, the MDs and RNs that came with us to form the nucleus of the founding directors, were people that cared about patients, just like Dr. Hudson here. He cares about the end result of his research being beneficial to one person or a million people, but it's going to help somebody. And you heard him, that's why he left the pharmaceutical industry, was because it was the opposite. It wasn't his goal. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Dr. Hudson again here. I think this is a shorter break coming up, but as Casper says, please support these people that are our advertisers. Without them, we wouldn't be here at all.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio. Please share us with your friends.
Hi, my name is Kevin Quinn, and this is the Inside Scoop on Cannabis. Cannabis conferences are almost becoming commonplace, but if you want to experience a true clinical cannabis conference, you should pack your bags and head to West Palm Beach, Florida for the 9th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics. This 3-day conference will be from May 21st through 23rd, 2015. The conference is sponsored by Patients Out of Time, a nonprofit educational organization that is celebrating, get this, their 20th anniversary this year. Now, that milestone should give you a clue. These folks have been working hard for 20 years to educate healthcare professionals about the importance of cannabis therapeutics. Their conferences began in 2000. Now, this year marks a departure by presenting just 1 year after their successful conference in Portland, Oregon. This year's theme is Celebrating the Past, Embracing the Future, with over 30 live presentations from the who's who in medical cannabis. Octogenarian doctors Raphael Mecholem, often called the grandfather of cannabis research, and Lester Grinspoon, professor emeritus from Harvard University, will lend their historical perspectives to this historic conference. Also by Skype will be an appearance from Dr. Andrew Weil, the alternative medicine guru who was one of the first federal marijuana researchers. But the conference is also embracing the future, and attendees will hear presentations from some frontline doctors, such as Dr. Donald Abrams and Dustin Sulak, top-notch researchers such as Dr. Gregory Gerdeman and Dr. Sue Sisley, and of course, patients. This year's patient roster includes 2 names from the world of professional sports. Retired NHL player Riley Cote and Greta Gaines, champion snowboarder, will both talk about their experiences with medical cannabis use. This conference is being held Memorial Day weekend at the Palm Beach County Convention Center, so it's appropriate that veterans are represented. A panel of experts including Patients Out of Time founder Al Byrne, retired Lieutenant Commander U.S. Navy, and Perry Parks, a Vietnam vet and PTSD patient, will give the human side of this important issue. For further information, please visit patientsoutofTime.org. With the Inside Scoop on Cannabis, I'm Kevin Quinn.
Yes, stay alert with consciousness. That's all we ask is be responsible. But we ask you to do that if you're like even eating sugar. I mean, good golly, Miss Molly. Don't have a big Hershey bar and then plan on driving someplace quickly because you're going to be taking a nap in about 20 minutes. So, I mean, you know, let's be real, people. Take care of yourselves and the world around you. Want to give a big thank you to KDK Distributors for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. Also remind people we have been updating our website, and it's a whole new beast. And we're not done yet, but keep coming to it and share it with your friends. We are celebrating what cannabis can do for the body, the mind, the spirit, and the soul. And we are doing so with our joint friends, Lynn, Mathre, and Al Byrne, and one of their joint friends here on the Big Joint broadcast. I'm going to let them get back to their joint chat here at Time for Hemp.
Thanks very much, Casper. And we hope to see a lot of you down in Florida. It's not only the 9th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics, May 21 to 23, but it's our 20th anniversary. And we're glad to see movement. But, it was 20 years ago when we, were looking around and saying, the government's just not moving. And we've got these federal patients who get cannabis from the government and they're dying out. And we figured the government just wants nobody to know about them. But for impatience out of time with the whole purpose of educating people about cannabis. One of the things that comes up is, how do you dose? What's the right cannabis to give to people? And a lot have talked a lot of years about strains. And as time went on, it's like, well, that's fine. But, you take this seed here and you grow it in Florida, or you grow it in Oregon, and it could come out pretty differently. But I think that's the exciting part about Darryl Hudson's work, is trying to help us get closer to figure out what works best for patients. So, Darryl, if you can talk a little bit more about what you're learning, how you're doing this, going about, learning things about cannabis, and what implications will that have for dosing?
Sure. So I guess to start, when we start to look at the cannabis plant on the genetic level, having the published genome sequence out there available now is a really, provides like a skeleton for us to start to build off of. And the next thing we really try and do is try and develop the evolutionary tree, or the phylogenetic tree of how cannabis was domesticated and spread across the globe, and how the genetics correlate with those changes. Because it really is, on an evolutionary level, it's the environment that's largely influencing which individuals are able to successfully breed and pass on their genes. And so that then leads to this whole, indica, sativa sort of debate that people have always had. To me, as a geneticist, and we've got data that we're going to be publishing soon, which will kind of, refute the whole indica sativa debate. But to me, that's just what I consider plant racism. It's looking at the world in black and white rather than seeing all the shades of gray that are really out there. So I try and, take a step back and see plants for what they are, because really most of them are hybrids. They do have some of the ancient indica genes and some of the ancient ruderalis genes and some of the ancient sativa genes. And there may be a category Afghanica as well, which has been proposed by a number of people. So there really is different, what you would call heritage or pioneer varieties, landrace varieties that were around the globe in different regions, but through the domestication, and especially within the last, 40 years of underground breeding, most of these plants are no longer a pure indica or a pure sativa. And it really is kind of guesswork when it comes to saying how the plant is going to affect you. That being said, there does appear to be some correlations between, a sativa-looking plant and how it might make people feel. But we don't want to guess anymore, let's say. We want to start to actually look at the metabolites, look at all the cannabinoids in the plant, look at all the terpenes in the plant, in the finished product, and then start to make those correlations both to the genetics and to how those plants were grown, to the environment, to be able to optimize different ratios of those things. So we've learned a lot in a short period of time, and we're fortunate that a lot of genetic research has been done in other plants, which actually allows us to make, even though these plants might not be extremely similar, we can often look at genes for, say, spider mite resistance or terpene biosynthesis, and start to pull out genes which are responsible for those processes. And that really allows us to start breeding them, whether it's through modern genetic techniques or traditional plant breeding, to obtain a very specific medicine in the end.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, yeah. And so now you've been taking testing, the patients are using something, and then you're testing what they're using to try to do that correlation? Is it where are you getting the patients, or how is this working?
Yeah, so first we started with the plants. I traveled around the world and collected a lot of different genetics, and we sequenced the genetics. Now what we've got up in Canada anyways is a commercial program where patients are being provided medicine through the mail. We've been very fortunate up here with the veterans that Veteran Affairs is covering the costs of the medicine. So the vets are getting free marijuana up here. And as a result of that, they've been a very effective trial group to get involved with, where we can actually see the varieties that they're using from the licensed producers up here. In time, we hope to take those licensed producers' varieties and also genome sequence them. But at this time, we have to kind of take with a grain of salt what those strains are. Is ChemDog, is OG Kush. This is obviously a very, one of the major issues that we still need to solve. But what we found right away working with a group called Marijuana for Trauma, which was spearheaded by Fabian Henry, I think he's been on your show a couple weeks back, was that there did seem to be some correlation for PTSD specifically in varieties that were working. Me being ignorant really to PTSD and to the psychology involved in it originally, I thought, oh yeah, sativas, they're going to love sativas. Let's get them really high, make them really happy, get rid of that depression. And it was actually the exact opposite. It was these heavy smashing indicas that were in the 22 to 25% range, really high THC, that were effective for the PTSD, and a lot of the sativa or these uplifting type varieties were actually causing anxiety and some of the negative effects. So it really did seem to matter which varieties we were using. Once we got up to over 70 different varieties that I had characterized with a relatively small group of vets, but over 10, it was, again, it's just sort of providing a baseline for us. But what we found was there was a common genetic lineage, a ChemDog lineage in all 5 of the top varieties. And so this was Rockstar OG Kush, a Master OG Kush, ChemDog, Chem 91, and Chem. All seem to be the top PTSD strains. And not just top, but they actually worked across the board for people. Whereas, some of the other strains were hit and miss. So now that we actually, know there's something in the ChemDog genetics that is being effective, we need to go start to pull those things out, amplify them, or modulate them in a very specific way. But it's again, it's not just the THC or CBD. It seemed to be there was a specific smell almost associated, and after a while, I couldn't trick the vets in doing these blind studies where I was just giving them numbers anymore. They knew based on the smell exactly what the medicine was, and I think we're starting to see that terpene cannabinoid correlation across the board. We've had people, waving different varieties under autistic children's noses and having them pick out the variety that's the most effective just based on the smell. And this isn't even being smoked, right? So it's interesting to really start to pull out those correlations and see on the genetic level, why would the plant even produce these molecules? How can we make the plant produce these molecules in a more efficient way? And what is the result going to be?
This is just wonderful, because I just recently saw some film. It was a documentary on the military and the American Psychiatric Association, pretty much talking about over the years how the American Psychiatric Association has been able to experiment on our military, which we kind of know that. I mean, years back they gave military folks some LSD without telling them about it to see what would happen as they're trying to find different things, and we give them all sorts of things, but so many drugs have been given to them, and they come back complaining. And then when they finally say, you're in the United States, marijuana really helps me. Cannabis is really working for my post-traumatic stress. I feel so much better. And we ignore them. So, there you are up in Canada, where the Canadian government's actually recognizing this enough to the point of providing them, paying for the medicine too.
Darryl, will you be able to discuss this in May to some degree at the conference, this issue with the vets?
Absolutely, and I hope we have a lot more. I mean, things are coming out with PTSD in the vets all the time. There was just a study that came out of New York, which compared vets that came home from Afghanistan to their pharmaceutical and opiate or alcohol and pharmaceuticals, and found a much higher recovery in the cannabis patients. So it's starting to come out all the time, and we really need to push it forward. Obviously, the vets deserve, if free cannabis is all we need to give to a vet to save their life, for the service that they've put in, that's something that, I'm happy to pay taxes for, to provide vets with free weed. So,
and as a vet, thank you very much. And we all, Casper and all of us do, Marilyn. And I look at it like, look, I volunteered. I served for 24 years in the Navy, Darryl. And I'm volunteering again. Give me the cannabis and don't arrest me and see how well I do or don't do. I'm willing to be a guinea pig for you again, all of you that are so scared about this stuff.
That's it. Yeah.
But I'm not, and I have talked to people like Dr. Hudson here, hundreds and hundreds of. And every one of them, I want to repeat, says the same thing, by the way. Don't miss what the doctor told us earlier. He's not interested in THC, CBD. He's interested in the whole plant. This has to be the way we go. Whole plant science. Am I right about what you said?
100%. I think, it's looking at the world not in black and white, but rather shades of gray. I mean, just because someone has a certain skin color or something doesn't mean they're a good athlete. To me, it's the whole entourage. It's the entire package that we need to be looking at, and it's gonna take a lot of effort to unravel that puzzle. But that's what I'm working towards.
How are you doing up there with your politicians down here? Our legislators haven't got it figured out yet at all. They're not even close. They know about THC for a couple of decades, and then a couple of years ago they learned about CBD. So they're on their way. They can count to two, but they don't get the whole plant thing at all. They don't get it.
They don't. We could spend a whole another day talking about the politics in the Canadian system. In my opinion, the new program was outlined to be decent and provide access to patients, but really what it's done is put the plant behind bars and made it so that you have to grow the plant in the most highly secure prison you've ever seen, and it's driving the costs up, and it hasn't been good for the patients. And I think it's kind of almost a strategy to maybe they're not putting people behind bars now, but we have to grow the plant behind bars. That doesn't make sense to me either. So we should be growing it outside, driving the costs down, and making it affordable for everyone.
Darryl, I can't wait to sit down and have dinner with you or something in West Palm Beach, but we got to go. We do want to thank you for your time and your intellect, and certainly the work you're doing. And we've got a minute here or something too. Is there anything you just want to finish up with?
No, I think the biggest thing that I always preach is just education, pushing the education out there. It's amazing to me how little even the doctors know about the endocannabinoid system, let alone patients. And so patients themselves need to be taking their health into their own hands and, unfortunately educating their doctors, educating their politicians, educating their, superiors in a sense, because they don't seem to take the time or energy to actually care.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. And again, I'm really looking forward to your research developing over it's going to be decades. You're going to be working on this. I can understand it. But this issue with veterans, post-traumatic stress, anything you can do to speed that up, please. We need that. We need that kind of background data really, really quickly. Because as a vet, and Marilyn as well. We work for the Agent Orange people in the Veterans Administration, and we've heard it over and over, thousands of times. Cannabis helps me. Why can't I use it? I'm a veteran. Leave me alone. Anyway, sir, thank you very much for your time and your wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. And folks, this is Marilyn and Al, and we work for patients at a time. Again, that's medicalcannabis.com or patientsatatime.org. Either place, you can find all kinds of information about registration for the conference, how to sign up, about the auctions, the dinners, the various. We have a golf thing going on now. We've got a pre-conference workshop day, which is there. We have specialized courses for registered nurses, for medical doctors, and for lawyers, JDs. Quite a weekend. And so, again, medicalcannabis.com, the faculty, the prices, the agenda, the topics, the people, it's all there. Lynn?
That's it. I just was going to note that, again, being the 20th anniversary, the theme for this conference is celebrating the past, embracing the future. And we will be, looking for the past, this struggle of what's gone, why has it taken us so long to get here, and yet the future. And Darryl's one of the people that will be speaking in terms of the future, that getting a better handle on this genetics looks like we're going to understand it a lot more and know how to use it so much better. And again, we've over the years seen the amazing things with what little we know. So the more we learn about the plant, it just seems, the better things happen with the patients.
Okay, well, look, guys, we're going to be back same time, same place next week. We'll be interviewing another medical cannabis expert from somewhere in the world, Dr. Darryl Hudson, our guest today from Canada. And until then, this is Al Byrne for Patients at a Time. Take care.
And this is Casper Leitch reminding you and everyone that old age is a gift not given to everyone. Mary Lynn mentioned that we have been working in the struggle for a while. Next year is my 25th anniversary of being a hemp activist, and I can't imagine doing anything for 25 years. That is a lifetime all in of itself. And to see all the changes that have come before us these past few years has been rather rewarding, but we still have a long ways to go. And with that said, remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison